The Liberals and the left are on the retreat and they know it. They know that a new era is approaching and what they had been selling to the public has not been accepted, is not what people want, and does not bode for a promising future for the United States or anywhere else. Remember that they're the people in politics who want open borders. They want to interfere with the gender formation of children. They want criminals to be, at best, lightly punished, where they're even punished at all. They want restorative justice rather than retributive justice. They want a soft touch in all things because they believe that fundamentally people are inherently good and it is society that corrupts them. And this is just not true. And so watching this kind of worldview begin to roll back and begin to find itself on the retreat is honestly very satisfying for someone who is a conservative or right-winger like myself. Watching them flail and fail to be able to properly articulate why it is they're losing and what it is we're losing with their retreat is quite wonderful. But I thought we'd go through a few things that really exemplify the complete and total failure of the left and the liberal project entirely. So you've got here a statement by Biden, and this is a statement that was made not only by Biden but by Kamala Harris and probably the whoever is around the Biden administration and whoever was controlling their social media. They decided to publish this, and this was just the last embarrassing damp squib of the liberal order that had failed to justify itself on its own terms, right? So Biden had apparently tweeted out, "Today I am affirming what I long believed and what 3/4 of the states have ratified. The 28th Amendment is the law of the land guaranteeing all Americans equal rights and protection under the law regardless of their sex." Now, I'm pretty sure that was already the law, but that's not how an amendment is made. And of course, the community note is like, no, that's not true. But why is he doing this? This is embarrassing. Why are you tweeting this out? I mean, aside from the fact that America doubtless already has gender discrimination laws to prevent that kind of thing, why are you doing this? Like, this is a sort of last-ditch Hail Mary. Oh, maybe that if I just tweet this out at the very end of my very limp and unpopular presidency, then somehow this will stick. This isn't going to stick. This is not how it works. And this just looks sad and desperate, clawing for relevance for an issue that actually isn't really very important and actually isn't really affecting very many people. Like, I doubt the majority of women in America are feeling like they can't get ahead in life because they're women. Right? I really doubt that's the case. I doubt, in fact, I know it's not the case, that they aren't being actively discriminated against when it comes to employment. If anything, they're being actively discriminated in favor of, especially in certain kinds of jobs, such as tech jobs and the military and things like this, where they want to increase their quote-unquote representation in those fields. Women are obviously being discriminated in favor of. And there are loads of accounts of young men who are like, well, I'm just not able to get a job. And there was a guy who decided he'd just change his name to a woman's name with the same CV, instantly starts getting offers. It's like, look, we know that you are discriminating in favor. This is not an acceptable thing to do, though. Like, positive or negative discrimination is not fair either way. What you should be doing is literally just, I loathe to bring up the dreaded meritocracy word because it seems so cliche at this point, but honestly, just hire people that you think are going to be good for what you do. Excellence is a much more sensible pursuit and also a much more fair pursuit than arbitrarily discriminating. And my God, like when I get on a plane, I definitely want to see the excellence that has been selected for rather than arbitrary identity categories. But anyway, so this has been something that the powers that be around the world are having to come to terms with. Right? Here's Guy Verhofstadt, the arch imperialist of the European project, who's desperate to constantly just essentially declare Palpatine style a new European empire. And he says, America as a liberal empire is no more. Welcome to a new era of US governments by oligarchy, where billionaire members of Mar-a-Lago decide US policies. Okay, billionaire members of Mar-a-Lago, you mean Trump, was elected on a popular mandate in every institution and level of government including the courts. There's just nothing illegitimate about Trump's reign over America at this point. It is resounding that on every level the left has failed and the liberals have failed. And so you go, well, if that's what the people have chosen, isn't that democracy? Is that actually oligarchy, or is that just democracy selecting results you didn't want because the program you were offering was actually atrocious and really, really unpalatable? And of course, Guy then is like, well, what about Europe? We're the last. We're going to be the last liberal continent. Why? What are we going to do? It's like, well, are you going to be the last liberal continent? It seems like Britain might actually be the last liberal woke North Korea. It looks like Europe is actually going far right as well. It looks like the Orbans and Malonis of the world are starting to gain traction in Europe, doesn't it? It looks like the European Union might not be as liberal as you think either, Guy. You seem, in fact, very much like yesterday's man, someone who's not equipped to deal with the challenges that liberalism itself has created. You don't have the answers to these problems. You are the source of these problems. If in the 20th century, the United States and Europe and Britain had not been insanely committed, detrimentally committed to liberalism, then we wouldn't be having any of the problems we have now. We would have other problems. It's not the world would be perfect, but we wouldn't be having these problems that desperately need fixing. We wouldn't have mass influx of people coming into the country, legally or illegally, because we would have just stopped them by force. We would have just physically taken them and ejected them or prevented them from arriving here in the first place. And we wouldn't have just legally opened the borders and said, no, we'll just take millions and millions of random people from all around the world. That wouldn't have happened if we weren't excessively committed to liberalism. But that is what's happened, and these are the problems we are now saddled with. And you are sat there going, well, okay, I can't believe people don't want to be liberal. It's like, well, look at what it's done to us. Like, we may have had more and different and diverse problems otherwise, but at least there wouldn't be these problems, these existential, civilizational problems that liberalism has foisted on us. Because, of course, liberalism is the great breaker of chains, the great dissolver of bonds, the great homogenizing force in the world that seeks, as Guy seeks, to homogenize everything it has control over, because it wants to reduce everything back to the pre-social man. And it is not just insufferable, it is unworthy of being in control of our civilizations for the 21st century. It is unworthy of being something that can consider itself an affirmative moral position. Because at this point, it's very clear that it's not. It is not affirmatively moral to muddy the waters when it comes to gender roles. Right? It's not acceptable. It's not a good thing to do. It is not an affirmative moral thing to muddy national identities and ethnic identities. That is not a good thing to do. It is not an affirmative moral thing to privilege minorities over the majority. Complain about oligarchy, but you don't complain about what the core premise of the liberal order, which is to protect and privilege minorities over majorities. That's not moral. That's immoral. How can you do that to people and claim that you care about democracy? And the idea that some bureaucratic oligarch like Guy Verhofstadt would complain about oligarchy. It's like, sorry, are we saying that America wasn't an oligarchy when it was essentially run by the Democrats? Is that what you're saying? Because that's obvious nonsense. Are you saying that Europe isn't an oligarchy? Because that's obvious nonsense. But, I mean, bureaucratic oligarchy is different to a capitalist oligarchy, I suppose. But at least the capitalist oligarchy doesn't believe in rending apart the social norms and bonds that make a society, right? That's not what it's trying to do. It might do that unintentionally, and this is the conversation that we need to have with the tech bros at some point, but that's not the purpose of it. The purpose of it is at least just prosperity, success, and growth, right? I've got my issues with capitalism, like almost everyone else who isn't a raging capitalist, but it's not consciously evil. It's unthinkingly evil. Whereas liberalism is consciously evil. But anyway, so the left definitely know that they've lost this, and the institutions are no longer behind them, right? That's what they're most consciously aware of. Because what happened in 2020 is that the institutions, the media, the three-letter alphabet agencies, the civil service or the deep state, whichever you'd like to call it in America, the academics, they all moved as one. The cathedral sang from the same hymn sheet, as it were. And what they did is drove out millions of people onto the streets to cause trouble. And that didn't happen this time, because I think they're well aware that their last gasp was in 2020, was with the Biden administration, and now they've failed. And so you got a small number of a few thousand, maybe, insane leftist, pussy hat wearing protesters. No war, no Trump, no effing way, but limp. There's no energy to this. This is you essentially being performative. And you know nothing will change from this. The media has been cowed. The academics have been cowed. All of the institutions have been cowed. The three-letter agencies have been cowed. Everyone has realized that Trump has won it all. And this way of dealing with politics is coming to an end. And in 20, 30 years' time, we will have to explain to new generations that, yeah, well, actually, there was a time where a bunch of people who thought that they could change sexes were in control of the country, and you had an admiral in the US Navy who was a man wearing a dress, and this was normal. They were proud of what they did. These people were very strange, and they actually wanted to destroy the United States. They wanted to privilege foreign people who had no right to the United States over Americans. And it's the same in Britain and in Europe. They wanted to privilege these people, and this was how our countries were being run. And we must never return to that time. And you get the sort of talking heads of the liberal order who are now, again, yesterday's men, looking at the situation from the outside and thinking, okay, well, where do I fit in? People like Lewis Goodall of the news agents. They're like, oh, well, I mean, we have to admit, the global liberal order is very much on the back foot, and the momentum is entirely against us. And moreover, we don't know how to get purchase in this new world. What are we going to accuse them of that we haven't already accused them of, and they haven't just burst through? What are we going to say? Oh, you're racist, you're xenophobic, you're sexist. I mean, these are all incredibly tired and worn out tropes, and no one's interested in hearing about them anymore. Because at the end of the day, even if all of them are true, we're still not going to just give up our countries to you. We're still not going to allow you to take these things away from us, no matter how you stigmatize them. And all you're doing is battering on a door that has been fully closed to you now. We don't care if that's what you think of it. We are doing what we think is the right thing, and we have far more moral legitimacy at this point than you do. And so the liberals are going to go away and lick their wounds, and they are going to regroup. Right now is not the time to be complacent. They are definitely going to regroup. It'll probably take a generation. It will probably take them a while to pick apart any small flaws in the new right-wing order, which is what liberals always do. And so really we have to be on guard for it. We have to watch them. We have to make sure that their narratives are addressed when they're raised, but make sure that we keep them permanently on the margins and forever on the back foot. We don't really need to hear from these people anymore, actually. And their worldview and their projected project for the West is just something that has been roundly rejected. So well done, everyone, and stay frosty.